let's just sew whatever.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to once again be making the Guardian backpack from Linds Handmade. I feel like I did this bag justice finally. We made it using a waterproof canvas print for the pockets, main panel, and part of the lining. And then I used a luxe vinyl that's coming to my website I think in June in this really pretty purple. I used webbing from Indolove Creation, I believe. And then the zipper tape and hardware are all from my website. Here is what it is when you open it up. We added a cargo slip pocket. And then the bottom of the bag is finished with binding. Other than that, there's not a lot as far as interfacing, etc. And I do have a video showing you how I cut and interface this bag. So let's get into it. The order that I do things on this pattern is a little bit different than the order listed in the directions, and that's mostly so that I can get like tons of the prep work out of the way. And one of the last steps I do is actually the front pocket. So I'm gonna start by basting my foam on the main panel. This is not part of the pattern. This is just optional for me. My friend Rosie has a video showing how she adds a slip pocket to the front of the bag, which is absolutely adorable. If you are using a domestic to make this bag, which is totally doable, I would recommend if you're adding foam to zigzag the edges even more, or if you can, remove it from the seam allowances because it does add a bit of bulk. And then I'm going to add my nameplate to this as well. I have cut my 20-inch length of zipper tape and added 2 zipper pulls. I prefer the look of 2 zipper pulls myself. Okay. Finding the center. Put that. I love purple with light gold. It's so pretty. Okay. So that's prepped. And then go ahead and baste my pockets. Well, so I'm just sewing 1/8 of an inch from that top edge. You could even add a little strip of vinyl to the top of this pocket if you wanted to. Just keep in mind the bulk that that will add. Okay. This is the cargo slip pocket that I'm adding. So I've cut a piece 15 by 16 and folded it in half so that it's 8 inches tall, 15 inches wide. I'm folding it in half, creasing that center, and then I'm going to draw a line there, just really light. Okay. And that is so I can stitch down the center later. So I'm finding the center again, lining up my ruler and pressing. I'm going to slide the ruler out and line up the edges and top stitch 1/8 of an inch on that fold.
Okay, and then we're going to go to the other side of our 1-inch line. So there's my center, and I'm laying it next to that, folding and creasing, sliding the ruler out, and top stitching 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And then I'm going to grab my front lining panel. I'm going to fold this in half. Keep in mind the shape of that panel. So it's wider at the bottom, thinner at the top. And we're going to line up that center, keeping it open. And then I'm going to sew 2 parallel lines next to the center. So I'm going to come up to the top and back stitch across to help reinforce, and then I'm going to come down the other side. And then we're going to fold this in on itself. And then you should have just enough overhang to base this in place. And I'm kind of feeling through the fabric to know where I'm basting. And then we'll cut away the extra. So you can add this kind of cargo slip pocket to any pattern by measuring the width of your item. So in this case, the widest part is like, I think 12 inches on the bottom, and I added 3 inches, and that's just to be safe. Because if you think about it, you're adding 2 inches. But so that's prepped and ready. So now I'm going to move on to the straps. This is a lot of work in the straps, but it's really fun, super worth it. Very satisfying to make. I'm going to go ahead and baste my bottoms together as well. This is another quick, I don't want to say like mindless, but just one of those simple prep things that you can get out of the way. So I'm just laying wrong sides together. You could totally add purse feet to this if you wanted to. And then I'm just trimming away the excess. All right, let's go ahead and get our zipper ready. Okay. Oh, there they are. So we have our exteriors and our linings, And this is a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So laying right sides together. And laying those wrong sides together and top stitching. You really don't want to use materials that are super thick for this, or you're just going to make your life harder. Okay, and now while that's still sewn together, I'm going to mark out my center on both sides of my zipper. So the back side and the front. And then, not done yet, I'm going to add double-sided tape to these zipper tabs so that nothing shifts on me while I'm sewing it later. I found that was an issue I was having. It doesn't need to be the whole length of the zipper tab, and it doesn't need to be a really big piece. As far as the width, you can see I'm just using 1/8 inch wide here. And then you can check the length of your zipper and make sure it meets the length required in the pattern, which is exactly what I have here. So we are good. I'll set that aside. All right, so this is optional. I showed how I cut these within my cutting video, so feel free to check that out for more information on these pieces. But I'm gonna add a piece of double-sided tape. Peel that off. And then I'm going to lay this directly on top of my webbing, making sure to line up the edges. Okay, and then we're going to top stitch that on. And then I'm going to trim these. Oh, I am so sorry. I did not mean to hit you. Trim these at opposite angles. And then we'll set them aside for now. We have our shoulder strap. We'll need our 1-inch snap hooks. always double check your snap hooks and hardware before you attach anything to it. Because sometimes you can't tell by looking at it that it's defective, but it could be that it is. And then you'd be sad. Alright, I'm adding a strip of double-sided tape to each portion there, and then this is our D-ring tab piece, so may as well tape that. And then this is our little handle overlay, may as well tape that. If you thought bag making was sewing, it is 99% double-sided tape. Alright, so for the shoulder strap, we're going to grab these accent pieces. And I'm going to lay this lined up with that bottom indentation, and then we'll slide our adjuster on. And then I like to make sure that I don't have much or any tape touching the hardware, but we're going to line up the edges like so. Make sure you add your snap hook before peeling your tape. Okay, and then we're ready to top stitch those on. I'm going to start at this angle here, back stitch, come to this corner, pivot, pivot, and then I don't get too terribly close to the hardware. Come straight across. And then when I go up, I'm going to use this little scrap of vinyl to protect my hardware. And get to the corner, pivot, back stitch. And we'll just trim all those threads and set aside the shoulder strap for now, because it's done until later. And like seriously, just that little addition of those accent pieces make it look so freaking fancy. I can't even. All right, D-ring connectors. Just folding the long raw edge into the center. And top stitching. And then I'm going to cut this into 4 equal parts. So if you were going to cut using scraps, you would cut 2 by 3. I'm going to grab 2, well, all 4 of my D-rings actually. Well, just 2. set to his side. Those are for later. D-rings, making sure you're sliding with the raw folded edge in the center, and I'm going to clip this, and then I'm going to trim it at an angle now. And it can be the same angle for both pieces as long as your fabric isn't directional, and it's literally just like a tiny little angle. And these will get placed in opposite directions pointing up on the front, nope, on the back of the bag. Set those aside. So now what's left for me to kind of prep that isn't the front pocket is the side panels. Oh, no, crap. Handle. I'll get through this, it's fine. All right, we have our 12-inch handle and our handle overlay. We're going to measure 4 inches in from each side and mark. I'm going to grab, if you guessed double-sided tape, you would be correct. A strip of double-sided tape. I'm going to place this in the center. And depending on your webbing, it may fight with you on this. But we're just going to fold it in half towards the center. And if it doesn't stay folded, what you can do is top stitch the one side first. So I'm just going to sew kind of inside the line so that you don't see it from the other side, and then fold up the other half. You can see how this one doesn't want to quite sit. And we'll top stitch. And this doesn't have to be pretty. We're going to hide it unless you're not doing the little leather accent, in which case make it look pretty. And then we'll center this over the handle. So then on this side, what I'm gonna do is lay my ruler 3 inches in from the outside edge, centered, and I'm going to make 4 little marks in the corners, 1 inch in. Those are gonna be my sewing points when I attach the handle. And you're gonna wanna like smoosh it down. Yeah. Those are my points when I sew the handle into place. And I'm going to add some double-sided tape. That'll be ready for later. Now we're moving on to the side panels. Making those 4 marks. That'll do it. And then we're going to connect all those dots. And cut it open. So I'm going to grab some super sharp scissors and my seam ripper, and I'm going to get it started in one corner. And then I'm going to finish cutting it with these scissors. Just be really careful not to cut too far. All right, and then we'll grab our other connectors. I'm going to slide it through the top, and I am going to line this up with the very top edge of the side panel. You should see your fold. The fold. I don't want to see your fold. We're going to sew this in place right above that line. Don't backstitch too much or you could risk perforating your vinyl. Just give it a little extra security. And then we're going to grab our D-rings and slide that through to the back side. Pull on that, and then we're going to fold this in half and top stitch through both layers of the D-ring connector and on that little flap. And then I'm going to add a rivet there as well. Okay, and then we're going to go back to our prepped pile and grab our little pockets. You really don't want this to be a thick fabric where you're just going to have way too much bulk. We're going to line up the bottom edge first. Pick if your fabric has a right or a wrong side. And I'm just going to sew an L shape first. I found that if I started on the side, my pocket would kind of shift because I didn't clip quite enough, and I didn't want to clip quite enough. So I'm just going to do that. Grab this one. Angle the pocket. And then I'll grab my other one. Place the top of the pocket in place. And now that is all prepped. Next is adding the zipper. Throwing that in the trash. So for this part, I'm going to be using some double-sided tape. Surprise, surprise. I like to just add a little bit in the center. And then line up the center with right sides together. So the wrong side should be facing up. And that is just gonna help me keep that section into place. And then I'm gonna clip the bottom. So those are my 3 focal points, and then the rest I'm just going to press into place as I'm sewing it down. So we're gonna sew this on about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm gonna grab my screwdriver, just my little flathead. I'm really sorry, I may be blocking the camera angle or in view, but I really need to make sure that I line this up and get it in place. And now you could tape the zipper into place the whole way, but it's really not necessary. So long as you have those focal points and your zipper is cut to the right size, it should fit into place perfectly. And then we're going to grab the lining side. Just taping that one little spot. Matching up the center. And then I like to sew it from this direction so that I can see where my basting stitch is, just to verify that I'm catching all of that. And we're going to do like a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to press around this area. I need to move my zipper pulls out of the way. I have a little area I've already sewn, but that won't clear it. So I'll unzip it just a little bit. But I'm going to massage that area to make sure everything is laying flat and continue on. And then it just depends. It might be easier to unzip it all the way so that you're not fighting twice as much zipper teeth in this area. Because what we're going to do is we're just going to flatten out a little bit at a time. And really push the zipper tape out of the way. And I'm feeling through the fabric to make sure there's no bunching. And this will be the 4th time I've made this bag in the last 2 days. So this curve definitely took some getting used to manipulating that zipper tape. All right, so I'm gonna zip it back up and then press all of that down nice and flat and continue on. So at this point, I like to change my bobbin. Well, we're looking good. But this is a top stitch and you really don't want to run out of thread on this part. If you can, I would go ahead and iron on the lining side and just double check that there's no puckers in your zipper. We'll zip it up and I'm gonna iron this, just applying a little bit of heat on the lining side. I'm also gonna add a little bit of tape at the bottom here. Here's my tape. I just find this helps me later in case there's any lifting from the waterproof canvas. This will stay in line here. And I'm just using a little bit of steam and a quick press. Again, I'm so sorry if you see my head. I really want to make sure that I'm following this curve nice and close. I mean, it's the back of the bag, so who's really gonna see it? I mean, when it's on your back, but you still want it to look good. All right, I'm getting to this point, making sure my zipper pulls are out of the way. So pretty. All right, so now we can grab our exterior zipper opening, the other half, a little bit of double-sided tape. That's actually a little too far up. There we go. And then right sides together, so I want my vinyl to be touching the vinyl, and I'm gonna tape in the center. And then for this part, you want to make sure again the vinyl is touching the vinyl. Okay, we're going to try this for a third time. For some reason, I can't get it to stay straight. So we're going to sew it a different way. All right, lining up the center, make sure that the right sides are touching each other. Clip it in the center. Previously, I'd been able to just kind of sew it in a straight line, but it could be that this vinyl has like a little bit of stretch, which is preventing me from doing it in that way. So we're going to clip it in the round, because if it isn't straight, it really, like, your whole bag could look crooked. Okay. So yeah, it's maybe my center isn't quite right because I've got overhang there and everything is clipped well in that location. And if I have even overhang on either side, like, I'm cool with that. Yeah, it's pretty much even overhang. So my guess is I stretched the vinyl just a tiny, tiny bit. But at least the overhang is even so I can trim off the excess. I can live with this. So we're just gonna go slow. Making sure all of that stays lined up. It's getting a little weird here. And you could absolutely like tape the zipper in place the entire way. It just seemed like overkill. And I'm kind of pushing the zipper back into place so that it's even. Okay. So now we're going to grab the lining. And this time it's going to be linings touching. Lining up the center. And then I haven't stretched my waterproof canvas, so we should be good to line that up with our waterproof canvas side edge. But I'm going to kind of clip this into place just to make sure. Yeah, we should be okay. So I'm going to start on this side. Because I do that same kind of method where I just sew a straight line, moving the pieces to fit. And I'm sewing from this angle so that I can see my basting stitch. And then I'm just lining up my edges. Sewing next to the zipper, pull, just going slow. There we go. And like, I know this method works. Pressing on your zipper tape to make sure nothing is bunching. And you want all those layers to be nice and even. Starting to lose my waterproof canvas just a little bit, so I'm going to move that back. Okay. So then we'll zip it up. Double check, make sure you caught all of your lining, all of your exterior. Make sure your zipper functions as it should. Yes, That looks way better than it initially did. So then we're going to clip our lining and our exterior together. This is just while we top stitch though. You don't want to actually sew those together at this point. All right. All right. I'm gonna change it. I don't think it would run out. No, we had plenty, but now I definitely don't have to change it again. Okay, and then we're gonna start top stitching. I'm going to pull on my lining and my exterior, pulling them away from that seam, and so they sit nice and even with each other. If you need to unzip, you totally can. Sometimes it's helpful to like push your zipper tape down and out of the way so that you know and you can feel that seam sitting on itself, so that you know your lining and this seam here is sitting nice and straight as it should sit. And so you're not getting any weird bunching on the other side. So I'm just taking it area by area, holding things taut, leaving my needle in when I readjust. Looks really good so far. Very excited about that. So that was literally the hardest part of the bag, and we kind of saved it for the end. I still need my screwdriver. Let's go ahead and get these into place. These are gonna face up, so you're gonna put them down at the bottom, and we're gonna place them about 1 inch. Make sure you move your lining fabric out of the way when you're basting these into place. About 1 inch from the bottom. I'm serious. Make sure you move your lining fabric. You'll regret it. This all is sitting really nicely. Very happy. So we can grab this pile again. Okay, this is where things start to get a little more intensive. We are going to take our front panel. This is the front. We're going to grab our ruler and we're going to lay these down wrong side up. Wrong side up. And then take it to the machine and we're going to baste it with the corner right at the 3 inches in from the edge. So it's like 1.5 inches from the outside edge. Okay, and then when it's flipped over, we'll be in the right direction. Then we're going to grab our front panel lining, nope, and this. These you got 4 pieces technically in front of you. I'm going to sew my lining to the lining. And I am actually going to top stitch this down on one side. You can pick whichever side you want. In the pattern, she has you double-sided tape it open, but I just didn't feel like that worked well for me. And like you see it on the lining inside, but you're going to see some top stitching in there anyway, so I don't think it really affects the outcome of the bag. And now we're going to add our exterior pieces together. Just make sure everything sits nicely on itself. And then I top stitch this too. I've made sure that my lining is out of the way and that our straps are facing the back of the bag. And I'm going to top stitch on my exterior panel. The seam is facing the exterior front. And I know I'm only sewing through my exterior, my lining is just completely out of the way. So I just found that to be a really helpful step that doesn't really affect the outcome of the bag too much negatively. All right, I'm going to roll these up, keep them out of the way. Now comes the fun part of adding our grab handle. So let me grab the handle. All right, I'm going to fold this in half and just make marks at the 1/2 inch line. This is not necessary. I just found it to be really helpful so that when I'm placing it, it doesn't end up like crooked or wonky. So I'm going to line this up with my center seam, placing it and pressing down, and repeating that on the other side. I'm finding that center, pressing down, and then your handle will kind of have a 3D effect, pushing itself up. Now comes the fun part of sewing the box stitch to keep that handle in place and secure. So we're going to start. Earlier in the video I made 4 marks, and I'm just going to follow along from point A to point B to point C to point D, going nice and slow. Oh, poopsicles. Poopsicles. I messed up. Okay. It's not ruined though, thank goodness. But at this point you should have your linings nice and flat and those centers lined up. I was like, why does this feel different? The reason this is important is so that your lining isn't slouchy. If we had continued to sew that on, the lining would have been a little baggy in that area. We probably could have tacked it on and it would have made sewing the side panels on easier, but this is the way the pattern is written and I want to follow those directions. Okay. Okay, I have my linings clipped together. The centers are all lined up on the side panel. And now I can sew through all of those layers. So the cool thing about this like little overlay is it's reinforcing your backpack straps as well. So I am doing an X stitch over all of that. And that's really going to help keep all of those layers together and nice and sturdy. And see how this stitch here, it really doesn't affect the look of the lining negatively. So we're going to press this side flat. My machine jumped a little on the height difference, but I think it'll be okay. It still looks super cute. Oh, but we are ready to add the side panels. Of course, I didn't mark the center on the side panels when I was at my cutting table, so I'll do that super quick. Now this is another part where it gets kind of complicated, but it's also kind of fun. You just have to be patient and confident. Two things which I am not. First thing we want to do is completely move our lining out of the way. We're going to find our center snip and line that up with our center mark on the webbing. And I'm just going to baste that area down for both sides. Again, you must make sure you move the lining. You will be very sad. I will be very sad for you. All right, and then we're going to line up the bottom edge. And you want to clip your lining out of the way. And I really like the foam on the front panel because of the structure it gives the bag. Okay. I'm going to start on this side. I know that I clipped my lining out of the way. We'll start to sew that in place. Making sure the edges stay lined up. Give a little back stitch at the pocket. And I'm sewing next to the stabilizer. Okay. Continuing on, just make sure your lining is out of the way. I'm using my screwdriver to help me hold all those layers in place. Okay, now I need to pivot. So I'm leaving my needle in, pressing down. Go. Okay, and then before I move on to the other side, just kind of check this. It's not great. You can see there was some shifting. It's not going to be super obvious when we turn the bag, so I'm not going to worry about it, but What will help me later is if I press this open, making sure my lining is out of the way. Do not sew through your lining. And I'm going to baste this area with those side seams laying flat. Also, little issue is that I never trimmed this area. My little excess overhang. So, hopefully we can fix that. I'm going to trim this now before I forget. And then you can just check from the other side here. How's it look? How you feeling? Looks good to me. Hopefully it really does look good. Okay, clip the lining out of the way. This little strip is where it can get really complicated, so just make sure you leave it out of the way. And I'm kind of pulling at the angle here when it starts to curve. I'm kind of pulling on my fabric to help counteract the motion. Like we want everything to kind of curve, so I'm pulling on those layers. And then clip a little bit more. Making sure your lining here is completely out of the way. And press our layers back down. Make sure the lining is out of the way. I only say it because I did it one of the times I sewed it and I was like, no! My bobbin had run out and I kind of fixed everything and then I sewed through it and I was very, 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 very sad. Okay. Then we're going to do that same thing on this side where I basted down those layers. Because trust me, it's very helpful in the end when you're sewing everything together along the bottom. Just don't catch that lining panel as you're doing it. Stop right at that seam. Okay. Now we're going to sew the lining, and I found it easier to sew the lining on in a different direction. So I'm going to grab one of these panels meeting up there. Basting it into place. Gonna unzip my zipper. It'll help so I can access certain things a little bit easier. Okay. Clip bottoms together. And I am actually going to sew this side with the side panel facing down on my machine and the exterior of my bag facing up. Because like right here is where it gets really bulky, really fast, and like awkward to sew. So I just found that it helped me when I sewed it that way. Okay. And like adding the foam adds a lot of bulk and pushback. So I have to combat that another way. So yeah, that's the way I did it. You can see it's like already trying to separate because of the small amount of wiggle room you have. So I'm able to keep that panel nice and flat. You can see all of my clips have already come out. It's like, no. But that's okay because I knew it was lined up when I started to sew and nothing has changed. So for the side panel, we're gonna just pivot this out of the way. My needle is in the fabric. I can grab my screwdriver to kind of press these layers flat to sew through. And then pivot the weight back the way it should be. And there we go. And then I'm going to trim down my lining fabric in that curved area just to help reduce bulk. And then just like we did on the exterior, I like to baste this open and flat. then you can push it through just to double check. Make sure it looks okay. Looks good. And then we'll just repeat that on the other side. And if you want to start by sewing the more difficult side first, you absolutely can. Yay! Hardest parts are done. I wonder if you could add your handle, your grab handle on with like 1.5 inches in from the side so that you've got a little more wiggle room when you're adding those side panels. Probably couldn't hurt to try. Okay. Now I'm basting those seams butterfly to open. And we are ready to turn this so that the layers are wrong sides together. And I like to do first with the lining inside the exterior and push out all of your corners, check to make sure everything is secure, because after this you can't get back in there. So I've got a bit of an issue here. So we'll press that back in and we will sew it again, because that's not good. We don't want that. Yeah, I've got like a weird puckering issue. And then it didn't fully catch the strap. We can't have that, can we? No, no, no. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that with a lighter. Just to prevent any more fraying. Clip and squeeze all of that together. And I'm going to come in from the top so that I can sew around all of that again. I'm going to trim down a little bit of that excess. And we'll check again. All right, much better. I'm just hitting my threads up top with the lighter, but here is what it's looking like. Clip everything now into place, reshape those corners, making sure they fit nicely in the lining. And then line up the centers and the side seams, clip it all together. Because now we're going to base stitch through all of it, and your lining shouldn't necessarily be smaller, but if it is, that's not a bad thing because we're basting with the lining in place instead of having our exterior inside and then our interior being smaller, but things are just weird and bunchy. We don't want that. So we're going to base this all together, and if things are uneven, this is where we can kind of even it back up. And I am going to trim the bottom of this bag just a little bit in some areas, especially since my basting stitch is a little bit higher in some areas. Yeah, like right here, things got a little weird because we don't have a ton of room since this bag is finished with binding. Like, we don't have the gift of 1/8 of an inch or a 1/2 inch seam allowance like you do with most bags. right here. But you also don't want to trim through your seams if you haven't basted well enough, or they could start to come undone. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Everything looks nice. Excited. Good structure. Now we're going to flip it. We're going to unzip it, flip it, lining side out. And then I am just going to find my centers and baste along the edge. Again, finding my center. And basting it down. So now all of that will stay in place while I find the side centers and clip and get those curves into place as well. And then we're going to sew around the entire perimeter of the bottom panel. And it'll be so much easier because we've basted a great deal of it into place. So what we can do is kind of push so that I've got a nice flat area here. And we'll sew using about a 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. And as I'm getting towards the curve, I'm going to grab my screwdriver just to help me press those layers back into place. Making sure that everything stays lined up as we pivot that corner. I really like the bottom of this bag. It's such a subtle round shape that if you're a beginner to doing round bottom bags, it's not too bad. Like there's no sharp curves. It's a pretty smooth transition, and then with each one I'm able to leave my needle in, reposition, and kind of shape the bag along the curve. And then we're on a flat spot. I'm just checking from the other side, and I can see that I have cleared my basting stitch. So that's a good sign. That's good. We're doing good. Okay, here we go again. Pressing the lining. Be careful with that screwdriver if you're using a lining fabric that's like snaggable or rippable. Be careful. Oh look, my clips came undone. You can absolutely use staples to help you keep everything in place. If you need to. I started using a screwdriver this week. I'd seen it recommended and couldn't get used to it, but I got my nails done. I spent way too much money on them, so I'm like doing anything I can to protect them from getting hurt. And I noticed like my fingernails hurt from pressing the way I do, so I'm like, maybe I should use an item that isn't my body to help me. And I'd already been considering doing a custom screwdriver because like this machine screwdriver isn't pretty. It doesn't matter, but I want it. So anyway, all that to say, eventually we're gonna have rainbow. We're gonna have screwdrivers that match the glitter clips. Because I'm a monster. Oh, yeah. We did it. Alright, we're gonna just double check. Got a little wonky there. Check from the exterior side that everything looks good. Give it a good press. I'm pretty happy with that. Like, I don't think I could do better if I tried. So now it's time to add the binding. This is just a binding I'm testing out. I don't, like, if I bought it from someone, I'd be like, wow, that's cheap and gross. But I'm actually really enjoying using it. And the edges, like, it's not fraying, but you can see it's like kind of see-through. I don't know. I'm into it though. And it's really thin, so it's not adding more bulk as I sew. But I'm still adding double-sided tape. To the center. And then I'm gonna add the binding all the way around the bottom. And I'm just clipping and pinching around the curves. And I don't untape the entire thing at once. As I'm clipping, I'm pulling off the tape. The next Guardian I have cut is like all vinyl exterior, but I didn't add any interfacing, but I'm still like, oof, that's gonna be a bear to make. Alright, so I'm back to where I started. And I still have this much, so I'm gonna cut it down. I'm gonna relight. See how easily it burns? Like, ugh. We're gonna fold that edge over. Okay. And then we will sew it into place. And you just double check from the other side that you've caught all the layers. And I have done that. Woo. And then we're ready to flip the bag and finish by adding our straps. Well, ow, strap hardware. We already added our straps. Okay, just make sure you're pressing out at all the corners. And you'll see, like, that foam just makes it so yummy feeling. Unclip. Let down your hair. And now we are going to grab the remainder of our hardware. So we're going to grab our slide adjuster. We're going to go through the slider. Make sure it's nice and straight. Then we're going to grab our snap hook and loop around, making a circle to go back through the other side of the slider and back down. So you can see we've made a circle going back under it. And then I'm going to fold this over and sew that into place. First, I like to clip. I would not start sewing until you have flattened this loop. Make sure everything looks good. And then we'll repeat on the other side. Through the top, through the bottom, through the snap hook, through the top, around the bar, back down to the bottom, and fold it over. And you do not want to leave a raw edge on there. It could fray over time. If you wanted to, you could add a little scrap of vinyl. And then just, like I said, before you sew anything, just double check that your loops sit nice and flat. Okay, so now we can sew these on. We're gonna lift this out of the way. And I'm just gonna do like 2 parallel lines. You could do a box. Yeah, we'll do a box. I folded like an inch, so I've got plenty of room to sew the box. Okay, there is one strap finished. That is the backpack sewn. We have finished it. I'm so excited. Oh yeah. This strap, once you add that, really hides any mistakes because it's just such a stunning strap. And that is the Guardian backpack from Linds Handmade. Once again, better. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please let me know down below. Let me know if you'll be making this bag or if you have, and what kind of tips and tricks helped you make it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!